Ex-vegans, why did you start eating meat again? I still eat mostly vegetarian food and have done all my life. However, my husband was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and celiac, which means that a high fiber lower iron diet is not an option, and a lot of the substitutes are gluten free. More often than not, when he has meat I'll leave it or have the veggie equivalent, but there are just not enough hours in the day to make 2 separate lasagnas and sauce, etc. I have a friend who turned vegan because of ulcerative colitis. Weird how it affects different people differently. Got a genetic illness which makes me permanently anemic. My body only absorbs a tiny amount of iron from food and that amount is burned pretty fast. Turns out it doesn't help to cut that tiny amount as well. Also, I didn't replace the meat. I just left it out, so I basically ate less food. AI, my fellow Mediterranean iron deficient redditor. I'm still as veggie as possible, but I moved to a country where it is 10,000% harder to be vegan, Japan. This is mostly due to not knowing a ton of Japanese and the fact that there is fish or meat in so many restaurant foods, and the culture here isn't like in America where you can ask for items to be removed or substitutions. Not that my Japanese ability would allow me to do that anyway. Even the sauces, like oyster sauce, they're everywhere. I feel you. I'm not vegan, but I can imagine your struggles. The food in Japan was so good, though. I was using veganism as a guise for an eating disorder for well over a year. When I finally realized I was in trouble, after losing 80 pounds, I went and bought lamb chops and devoured them. Also therapy. Same here. Restrictive prep, heavy diets and disordered eating are a perfect storm. I was on a diet for health reasons. When I was told I was allowed to eat meat again, my fridge started looking like a Mexican fever dream. I want to eat that dream. My aunt was a vegetarian for health reasons. The day she got diagnosed with cancer, she went to in and out. I was traveling in Africa. Edit, this part of the trip happened to be in Zambia. Not that the specific location really matters for the point of the story. And stayed in a small village off the beaten track. I had just arrived, and as the matriarch of my host family was showing me to my room and helping me get settled in, her boys were out back slaughtering a goat for me. I couldn't turn down that meal because that goat represented a substantial part of the family's assets. The whole experience made me realize that the social constructs around sharing food are far more important to me than what the food is. If someone is serving it, I will eat it with gratitude. That's what the Dalai Lama does. When given a choice, he chooses vegan. If he's a guest, he honors the host by accepting what is served. Not me, but my brother-in-law went vegan for a stretch. One of his pet causes is donating blood. As soon as he's able to, he's down at the blood clinic donating again. Anyway, on a vegan diet, his blood iron levels got too low to donate blood, so it was back to meat for him. But his daughter, my niece, is still vegan, and it's driving them nuts, because she'll only eat those vegan chicken nuggets, and they're getting pricey. I became vegetarian specifically to fuel an active eating disorder. When I got on the path to recovery, I started eating meat again. This is a big reason that my GF and I stick to talking about going flexitarian or similar, rather than committing to any hard and fast rules of any sort. Restrictive diets are pure fuel for eating disorders, and both of us have suffered in one way or another from them. I was vegan for a year when I lived in a big city that had lots of inexpensive options for what one could eat. When I moved to a small town in beef country, the cost of good produce quadrupled, as did the cost of meat substitutes. I quickly learned that if I didn't eat whatever I could get my hands on, I would starve, so I started eating meat again. Some people say food deserts aren't real. They are. There are food deserts in my city. People with no transportation buy what they can get. We are several communities that only have convenience stores within walking or biking distance. No public transportation in my neck of the woods, unless you are disabled. I regularly practice knife throwing in my backyard. Maybe not the hobby you imagine for a vegan, but there we are, where my somewhat dilapidated garden shed is located. I've painted a target in white paint on the planks of the door and try to harness my skills by steadily increasing the distance. Alright, with that out of the way, 2 years ago I was going about this usual business and missed, as I'm wont to do, every now and then, Instead of colliding with the door, the blur of the knife shot by the edge of the door and buried itself in the soil. Except it didn't. There was a horrible noise, which I cannot liken to anything else really, but it obviously emanated from a living thing in absolute agony. I ran behind the shed and saw a spasming grey heap racing around on the lawn. It was a mature opossum, circling mindlessly, obviously so brain damaged as to have lost all sense of direction. The blade of the knife was embedded horizontally in its skull. I looked at it for half a minute, trying to imprint its poor face in my memory, then stomped on its head, as hard as my legs would stomp, to bring an end to its tortured state. Though it is admittedly disgusting, I felt a sacred obligation to not let its body go to waste. I spent the rest of the afternoon skinning and disemboweling the wretched creature, and then made a sort of goulash out of its remaining flesh. As shocking of an ordeal as the whole thing was, it made for a decent dish and my son lauded my cooking that evening, which he usually never does. The heck did I just read? TBH was expecting a shit-more ending. I wanted to see if it made me sick. I've since eaten it here and there but it's not often. I was vegan, food and otherwise, for near a decade. I'm planning on going back because I can honestly say that I've not been missing out. It's possible to veganize about anything these days. Oh, also, no, it didn't make me sick at all. I was vegan for 3 years and had gone home to my community, which is tremendously poor. To have cold cuts and a bag of Doritos is a luxury. My aunt, who was going blind, made a family feast and everyone came, and she made a very traditional lamb stew. My heart broke when I thought of how much of her income she must have spent to make this possible and felt like a completely entitled outsider when I told them I was vegan. They couldn't comprehend, when food is so hard to come by, why anyone would choose to not eat any protein available to keep from being hungry. Being vegan comes from a first world position of entitlement. It is a luxury to choose what you eat, when so many eat whatever is available, not out of an ethical decision, but out of necessity. I became homeless and couldn't afford to be picky about my food. My life is stable now finance-wise and I now eat a balanced diet with meat. Try to eat a lot of veggies, and I sometimes eat fast food and candy, which I didn't do when I was vegan. Reason I became vegan was I thought meat is gross, and I still think it is, so I still don't eat it too excessively. I wonder a lot how I would end up eating if I became homeless. I lost a lot of weight, to the point that people asked if I was okay. I was tired and had low energy. I ended up being anemic. I slowly ended up getting to a point that I started eating meat again. Hair loss and health issues got worse. I'm fine now. I was vegan for a year due to wanting to eat clean and it backfired. A friend had to abandon it when they finally got treatment for their eating disorder. They were already malnourished, and 15 years ago in the Midwest there weren't a lot of good vegan options around. Their therapist also kind of insisted, because it was somewhat being used as an excuse to not eat or not eat anything substantial. Over time they just transitioned back into eating a normal, non-vegan, non-vegetarian diet. Now it's kind of a mindfuck that they can go just about any fast food restaurant and get Beyond or Impossible. Various nut and soy milk is sold everywhere groceries are available, including some well-stocked gas stations. And no one looks at you funny if you ask about the ingredients in a dish. Not vegan but vegetarian. I was vegetarian for a good 4 years. Once I hit the 4-year mark, energy was at an all-time low. My whole body felt weak, and the kicker, I had very frequent nosebleeds. It was so often I was used to it for a while. Eventually the nosebleeds came to be too much, and I started eating meat again. Then the nosebleeds stopped altogether. I haven't had a single nosebleed thus far. Mind you, I quit being vegetarian 2 years ago. My partner was the same way, but she remains a vegetarian because she found out her diet made her B12 deficient. She takes B12 supplements and is back to normal. Was vegetarian for 12 years. Had a mental breakdown after a death in the family, and instead of drinking or getting high, I went out and got a steak taco. Life is too short to miss out on tacos. I'm a vegan, but I'm on my annual cheat year. Wait. I divorced my vegan wife. I had been vegetarian for 10 years. I became pregnant and was concerned that my baby wouldn't get all the nutrients she needed to develop in a healthy way. I still don't eat meat very often, and honestly the alternatives have come such a long way from when I tried my first veggie burger 20 years ago. The dairy substitutes have come so far as well. I remember when there were only 2 non-dairy ice creams that tasted like cardboard. I went from fat to extremely skinny and I hadn't strength. I wanted to have bigger muscles, so I started eating protein from veggies. It wasn't enough. I needed a lot per day to increase my muscles, so I started eating 2 eggs every day. And now, I eat 200 grams of meat 2 days a week just for easy protein. I still eat fruits and vegetables every day. I love it. The eggs and meat are just because I want muscles lol. So I started eating 2 eggs every day. Gonna have to do a lot better than that to be like Gaston. Not ex-vegan, but ex-vegetarian. I was a vegetarian back in 2011 to 2013 as I found myself eating a mostly plant-based diet with small amounts of fish or chicken. Was never a huge fan of red meat. I was warned by my doctor in 2012 that my protein levels were too low, so I increased my eggs, nuts, beans, and grains. Still wasn't enough though. Ended up being hospitalized in March of 2013 due to my blood pressure dropping way low, as well as my iron levels. I decided to slowly incorporate meat back into my diet, which ended up helping almost every aspect of my health. My nails were stronger, my hair grew faster, looked healthier, and I was better able to maintain muscle mass without struggling to actively keep up my protein levels. I still don't eat a ton of red meat, but man do I love a good, juicy steak on the occasion. I truly believe eating meat again saved my life. Kudos to those who are able to live a vegan vegetarian lifestyle, but based on my experience, it's not for everyone. When I had a work from home job, preparing and cooking was a lot easier. Had a job change. It was far more active and I no longer worked at home. I wasn't able to eat at work, and I didn't have time to prep and cook like I used to. Started getting fainting spells, feeling lethargic, and overall crappy. Still veggie. I moved country and it was hard to eat anything but homemade, no takeaway. Only restaurants were vegan only, which our friends and family didn't want to eat at. We ended up choosing to eat and cook vegan at home, but not when out with others. Been back in England 6 months, and no longer with my partner, but I still follow the same rule. Makes it easier to go out with friends, work new people. Feel less guilty if I see something I want to try that has milk or egg in it. Makes it easier when I visit on my parents especially. I am 100% healthier since going vegan, though it does take more work to make sure I'm getting everything I need, so no issues with health. It's all down to convenience to others, and the occasional craving of something that contains dairy. I think that's a great way to go about it. It used to really get to me when there was a little bit of dairy in my food that I didn't know about, but now if someone is making me a meal out of love, I will eat it. Very rarely happens though. I was traveling around and staying with people a lot for a while. They cooked me meals and I decided it was more important to be able to graciously accept what someone had made me than to stick to a certain diet. I have other dietary concerns that take precedence over a moral prerogative, including several allergies that severely limit my diet. I can eat meat, so I do. I also aim for sustainable veganism, which means I don't limit myself with an unreasonable hardline stance like some do. If I go out for the sake of the rare social outing and my options are limited, I'll have the meat option. Simply reducing your meat intake is almost as good as cutting it, and I'm contributing to deforestation with my soy consumption anyway. Sustainable in this case simply means you're less likely to break and abandon the diet altogether by not giving yourself a simple pass-fail mentality. If you're eating sustainably, game also becomes an option, which is very healthy and is fairly good for the environment, especially if you live in an area with no natural predators to herbivores. Was a vegetarian for about a year and a half. Went vegan for about 6 months after watching some documentary. I love kimchi and tofu. Ate a lot of grains and pasta. I'd bring whole cooked red potatoes around and eat them like apples. Cooked a lot of vegan, Indian and Thai recipes. The whole experience did make me a better cook, but in the end it was just too goddamn inconvenient. You have to put a lot of thought into your food, and a bunch of things have weird prep times, so I'd get home from class studio at 8 PM. do my dinner prep, and realize something has to soak or cook for an hour before it can be added to the recipe. Which means it's now 8:30 PM and the earliest I'll be eating is 10 PM, so I'd say frick it and have a salad. Plus you've got to find all these weird alternatives to things, and they are only at the weird hippie market where everything costs 20% more. Went back to what I called barfly vegetarian, where I'd be vegetarian, and even then, lacto-ovo, because eggs for breakfast are convenient AF Sunday through Thursday, and Friday and Saturday we'd go out and I'd usually eat meat for dinner or fourth meal from the Kelbasa street cart. Left to my own devices, I still don't eat a lot of meat. I'd be perfectly fine going back to sweet potato tacos 3 nights a week, and these Beyond Burgers have changed the game up. I am currently vegan. When people ask me what I miss most about not being vegan, it is convenience every time. I was a vegetarian for like 17 years. I'm super anemic now and started eating chicken again last year. I still have a heavy vegetarian diet most days and don't eat a lot of chicken, but my anemia isn't as bad as it was. I have some guilt about it still, but I'm not dang near passing out every day anymore. I was also really bad at substituting for this diet since I was so young when I stopped meat and options weren't available like they are now. I didn't know about soy and estrogen and developed ovarian cysts that went away in 3 months from now. More soy too. Fun times. Chicken won't do much to fix your anemia, red meat is much better for that. Also, think of it this way, if you have guilt about eating meat, which is totally acceptable, a larger animal provides way more meals than a smaller animal can. Vegan for a year. Mom made the special ham recipe my great grandmother used to make when she was still with us. Took a bite to taste, ate the whole thing and said frick that. And to everybody saying veganism made them weak and exhausted, go get checked for nutrient deficit. I was vegan for an entire year and I've never had any issue health wise. Blood tests were all good. Yes, I was taking B12 and omega-3 supplements. Definitely, vegan for 6 years and like 15 days and I've never had a deficiency or broken a bone. I was born into an Indian vegetarian family and never ate meat or eggs for the first 2 decades of my life. Home cooked nutritious food had me healthy, so I did not have the need to eat meat. Then I moved countries and it was impossible for me to home cook every day and have a busy job. So I reluctantly started eating meat, and I have never felt so good. I feel very energetic and healthy. I don't regret starting to eat meat and I absolutely love it. 1. I was tired of every meal with other people devolving into an argument over ethics, because they wouldn't just let me eat my freaking food. 2. I started dating my now wife, and I didn't want her to think I was weird. 3. Disagreements with the larger vegan movement over some ethical considerations. Number 1 was the big one. If you think vegans are insufferable, try being one. Don't even preach. Just exist. Shocking how many freaking nutritional experts come out of the woodwork. Every meal was exhausting. It was the most healthy I've been in the past 10 years. Transitioning back to a plant-based diet ATM because I've grown older to the point I no longer have that many fricks to give. Not vegan here, but I stopped eating meat a while back and went back to it. Last year I started to notice that when I ate meat I felt like I was going to die. My guts just hated me and afterwards I was in the bathroom like crazy. Red meat, high-fat meat, pork, chicken wasn't too bad but still had issues. I spoke to my cousin about it. She just found out she had Crohn's. Not having insurance, great insurance funds at the time. Doctor visits were out of the question. She told me to start eliminating foods from my diet and see what is triggering it. Found dairy products and meat were the culprits. Unfortunately, because I love dairy products and meat, switched over to a vegetarian diet and immediately felt better. I ended up gaining weight, which was a bummer. Getting enough protein was an issue for me, but I was spending significantly less time in the bathroom and I also didn't feel like my insides were rioting. We go back and forth between meat and veggies. I've actually found a lot of the vegetarian meals I like more than the meat-based recipes. I hadn't eaten meat in a year and a half in college. One day I was hungover and looked out the window and saw McDonald's having a sale on Big Macs for 69 cents. I ate 5, puked, and never looked back. Lol, I eat meat pretty regularly, and 5 Big Macs would definitely mess me up. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.